Hello, it's your friend Phil here, Project Management Training Coach. Today we're going to be having a whiteboard session and we're going to be looking at what has changed in the PMBOK Guide 6th edition. In other words, what has changed from the 5th to the 6th. Now I know people might feel, hey, it's a bit late in the day to do that. No, it's not, because a lot of folks who took the 5th are still trying to take the 6th. They took the 5th and didn't pass and are now on the bandwagon to take the 6th, or they are getting ready to jump on the 6th. So I hope that by the time we get done, there will be some clarity on what exactly has changed. Okay, and I'm just going to be giving it to you raw exactly as it is without trying to pretty it up. So let's go to the whiteboard and see what the changes have been. So I'll start off first of all by going straight into chapter 1 and breaking it down from chapter 1 to 13. The good news is there are no new chapters, but taking a look at chapter 1, what has changed? Well, right off the bat, at a very high level, there are more examples. And these examples are going to help you understand the concepts a lot more. So more examples of what projects are in the first few pages, for example. There's also more imagery, more figures, and good imagery to help you grasp whatever is being spoken about. You know, figure 1-1 is really good because it shows you the organizational state transition via a project, really what a project is used to do, to take you from your current state to your future state, whatever that looks like. So that was a very good image that was added. I think that was value. On page 1, you've got a lot of examples about what projects are and different types of projects like the Taj Mahal and so on. I think that was a good addition. And as you progress through, you'll find out that the narrative of value creation through projects, it's very visible there. Value creation. There's also another new image added called project initiation context, and pretty much shows you the different things that could contribute to a project being authorized. Now there is a new chart here on page 9 which you guys have not seen before if you are on the 5th edition. And this chart is called Example of Factors that Lead to the Creation of a Project. So I think that's a good one to look at. Factors leading to project creation. Go check that one out. Okay. And some other little topics here and there that may not have been talked about or viewed in this way. There's another figure I will call your attention to. Check it out. You know, in fact, all these things that I'm suggesting here, you might want to check those out right off the bat. Figure 1-3, portfolio, programs, projects, and operations. A little bit of a different spin from how it looked before, but it gives a very good image of how, you know, programs roll up into portfolios, how projects roll up into programs, and how operations could be part of the program and at the same time part of the portfolio. So that's a good one to look at. We have some repeat figures, you know, pretty much the same. There's a new one, figure 1-4. Check that out as well. I don't believe that was there before, about the organizational environment. Page 18 pretty much runs through some definitions here. Project life cycle, project phase, phase gate, project management processes, project management process groups, and project management knowledge area. So I don't recall these being here before. So my suggestion would be to take a look at page 18. Okay, I hope this is a guide for you to just help you hone in on any of these new things. All right. Page 25 is the new page 61. So back then we used to call it page 61, so page 61 is now page 25. This is the page that you want to be able to replicate. It's the one that's got the initiating, planning, executing, monitoring and controlling, and then all of the knowledge areas down from integration on down. That's now page 25. Very important page to master. Page 26 is also an important page, and I'll say go for page 26 too. Page 26 defines these three important recurring themes. So page 26, WPD, WPI, and WPR. Those three are talked about as an introduction on page 26. And then on page 27, you have an image showing you the flow of WPD to become WPI, and that becomes WPR. So this could also be another interesting page for you to look at. That hasn't changed much from the 5th edition, but some of the process names have changed, so bear that in mind. Okay, now I quite like what they did on page 28 of chapter 1. Page 28, right up front, and this is what I had suggested in the previous edition, but I'm glad somehow, somewhere it ended up getting to them, or maybe they thought of it and introduced it. The whole topic of tailoring. I wanted this to be included early in the book, and they did it, and I'm really glad they did that, because it helps people understand that the PMBOK guide is not the entire kitchen sink being thrown at something. No, the PMBOK guide is a body of knowledge that you need to take and tailor to your project, and that's what people were missing in the 5th edition, so I'm glad that's there. Page 29, very important page as well. This was not in the 5th edition. Page 29 is all about business documents, and that definitely doesn't ring a bell. In fact, it sounds like a bogus term. Business documents, two big ones: your business case and your benefits management plan. And these were not really talked about in the 5th edition. Under this umbrella, we had business case, but we didn't have the benefits management plan. There was no dialogue of the benefits management plan at all. Perhaps it was mentioned in passing, but it wasn't as visible as it is now. Still on business documents, critical business / project documents, the PMI shows you where these documents are introduced into the pipeline of the project. So if you go to page 30, you'll see yet another image, figure 1-8. Okay, so take a look at that. You can see where the business case and the benefits management plan are introduced. These come in before the project is authorized, and then you have the starting of the project. So the business documents contribute to the project charter contributes to the project management plan. So that's a really good one to look at as well on page 30. Page 31 is pretty standard business, you can get that. And the following page is all the way up to chapter 2. They're pretty standard. Alright, so that's chapter 1. Let's get rid of this and let's go into chapter 2, and I'll give you my top of the waves of what has changed in chapter 2. So in chapter 2, there is an image that shows you something that looks like a WBS. But actually, this is showing you influence on projects. What could influence the project? And of course, it's your EEFs and your OPAs. And I did a very big video about this a few days ago. But you've got your EEFs and your OPAs, and under that you've got internal and external EEFs and OPAs. So take a look at that one on page 37. This is a good image to give you that visual to make stuff stick. I told you the 6th edition, they did quite well with the visuals, you know. And then the EEFs, they're broken out very nicely, you know, very neatly. I've got a mnemonic for the EEFs and the OPAs. You might have seen this on a previous video, but they went into a lot of detail. So, you know, pay more attention to EEFs and OPAs. Get it right once. Chapter 2 has really had a facelift from the previous chapter 2 in the 5th edition, in that this dialogue in chapter 2 is very heavily focused on organizational systems. It's a big part of chapter 2. And if you're not into systems theory or you've never studied it, this is one you might want to read to get a better understanding of systems if you knew a little bit about it before, but organizational systems. And it talks about various components such as management elements, governance frameworks, organizational structure types, which you know a little bit of, although some of those structure types have changed. It talks about governance frameworks. You've not done that before, so governance, at least not in the PMBOK guide. Governance frameworks, that is a new one. Management elements, and then it goes to organizational structure types. But on top of telling you about organizational structure types, it gives you some of the philosophies behind why an organization would choose a certain structure type. And the narrative continues into factors that govern organizational structure selection before serving you with the matrix projectized and all that stuff. Well, they don't have projectized anymore. It's project oriented. So we got project oriented instead. Page 47 is a big page to look at, I tell you. So the organizational structure types. Please take a read. Very important, page 47. And they don't serve it to you like before. We don't have the fancy diagrams, you know, that look like a matrix, you know, with the associations. We don't have that anymore. Those have all been taken out of the PMBOK guide. You know, we had one for functional, one for matrix, one for projectized, one for, what did we call it, composite, right? We don't have any of those images anymore. Roughly 2 to 3 pages of images have been taken out, and it's been replaced with this table on page 47. Okay, so table 2-1, you want to take a look at that table, okay? And we now have other organization types talked about first before getting to what we're used to seeing. So we've got organic or simple, then we've got functional. Then we've got multidivisional, which was not in the 5th edition, multidivisional organization types. Then it goes into matrix organizations, then project-oriented, then virtual and hybrid, and even the PMO as a type of organization. We never had that in the 5th edition, so that is stuff you want to look at. Page 47, that's a big one. Page 48, the PMO. What are the types of PMOs? I believe there was some dialogue about this, but I'm not sure to what extent it was in the 5th. But here on page 48, it's very clear the 3 types of PMOs: supportive, controlling, and directive. And directive, they take total control of the project, they bring in their own project managers, they report to the PMO, but then you've got controlling, which is not as drastic as directive, and you've got supportive. That dialogue is on page 48 if you're not too familiar with it. And the whole dialogue of the PMO just continues until you get to chapter 3. So that's pretty much it for chapter 2. Okay? Chapter 3 is now centered on the role of the PM. The role of the project manager. This was not the 5th edition at all, so for that reason, this is one of those chapters you're going to have to mop this chapter clean, because a lot has changed. In fact, it's not even changed, it's new, it's just been swapped out totally. So here we've got membership and roles talked about, comparing a project to an orchestra with the conductor versus the project manager, and the comparisons are made. It's kind of interesting. The responsibility of the team is also talked about here. And knowledge and skills that the project manager is expected to have. What is a project manager? What is their sphere of influence? That is on page 52 to 53. So the whole dialogue from 51 to 53, I find that to be very interesting. There's a statement here that was not in the 5th. And this statement is, research shows that successful project managers consistently and effectively use certain essential skills. Research reveals that the top 2% of project managers, as designated by their bosses and team members, distinguish themselves by demonstrating superior relationship and communication skills while displaying a positive attitude. So I found that to be very interesting, in that they're calling out, research reveals that the top 2% of project managers distinguish themselves by demonstrating superior relationship and communication skills. So I found that to be very, very interesting on that page 53. That's page 53. All right, so going beyond page 53, 54, 55, and 56, still anchoring back the project manager's interactions to the organization, to industry, the professional discipline of a project manager, what is expected across disciplines. And the narrative is the project manager needs to be a champion. This is like the first time the PMI is coming out to say the project manager is not just a gopher. You know, the project manager is someone who needs to be making an impact in their surroundings, in the firm, as far as other professional disciplines are concerned, and within the discipline of project management. So very clear, very strong. I like that. Then they go into project manager competencies on page 56. So talking about the talent triangle, page 56 talks about the talent triangle. And you got technical project management, leadership, and strategic and business management. Very important. So page 56, 57, 58, it gives you a clear idea of what exactly these skills are. Technical project management skills, what's that? Strategic and business management skills, what's that? And understanding this is only going to help you more in finding opportunities for your PDUs as well. So knowing what exactly is contained in these, you will get an idea of courses to go for to satisfy these needs in your certificate, because after you get certified you need 60 PDUs every 3 years. So it does help knowing what the PMI classifies as strategic and business management versus technical project management. You know, when we talk about technical project management skills, some people might be thinking about IT immediately. No, that's not what they're talking about. They're talking about things like scheduling and costing and, you know, risk management, things like that. Okay, so it's a great chapter. I often say it's my favorite chapter, chapter 3. So still on the role of the PM, Another valuable page is page 60, because it goes into the topic of leadership, and this was not previously in the PMBOK guide anyway. Great chapter to read. So you got some topics here dealing with people, qualities and skills of a leader. So what is a leader versus manager? We also have that someplace in the book. Politics, power, and getting things done, understanding different power types. This was not in the PMBOK guide 5th edition. This used to be in study guides. Now all of this information is in the PMBOK guide. So you got to read it. Situational, personal, relational, expert, different types of power, all talked about here on page 63. So that is a very important one too, if you're making the switch. Okay, so you got those power types. We've got a comparison of leadership versus management on page 64. So lead versus manage. Take a look at that. Leadership styles of the project manager on page 65. So let me get rid of all of this. This was not anywhere before the 6th edition. So leadership styles. Leadership styles. And we had a number talked about in previous other publications, but not the PMBOK guide. So leadership styles: laissez-faire, transactional, servant leader, transformational, charismatic, interactional. Those are talked about as well on page 65. So 65 is definitely a delight to read. 66 talks about personality, and then it goes into performing integration as in integration management. So they go quite far when it comes to setting the stage for integration. So page 67, yep, that's where it is. Integration at the context level, integration at the cognitive level, all that stuff. Read it up, understand it, and you'll be extremely glad you followed these points I'm giving you. Because if you've read the guide before, you may not want to just start from the beginning. I mean, if I were you, I probably would, because that's happened to me in the past, and I had to read the right PMBOK guide from scratch. But if and when you do that, at least you've got my notes, top of the waves, to help you hone in on what exactly has changed and what to focus on. All right, so that is chapter 3. So at this point, we're going to take a little intermission break. And when I come back, we will continue with this topic. So just flip open the guide and chill out and see what may have changed from when you knew it. Be right back. So welcome back. So I may not have told you in the beginning, when we started this dialogue, that we've got some study aids to help you guys who have taken the 5th, you're trying to get on the 6th, get on the bandwagon. Those of you who drive a lot and are great auditory learners, we've got this. It's called the Project Management Audio Digest. And in this, we've got 24 CDs and over 20 hours of instruction here. So you can get this at Praizion.com. Listening to this, it will put you in the fast lane to master a lot of what I'm speaking about. Definitely a must-have. I would highly recommend it. Even for those who are PMPs, you can get PDUs by listening to this and claiming them accordingly. PMI allows you to listen to material and claim them as PDUs. So if you're PMP, why wouldn't you listen to the audio digest? Claim it as your PDUs. It's very detailed and it goes into various facets. Also, we've got a book, Project Management Essentials. This is the book that our students use for the 6th edition, and it's been updated as well from the 5th. So it's definitely one that will help students who are studying. Okay? All right, so we just got done talking about chapter 3. Now we are on to a fun part, my own warped reality of fun or idea of fun. I know to a lot of people this stuff ain't fun. They're like, Phil, you got issues if you think this is fun. Well, don't blame me. I've been doing this for a while, and I really do think it is fun for project managers who are in it for the long haul. So right now we're going into chapter 4 to 13. So I want to set you up to understand the blanket level changes that have happened. Okay, so I'll do my best to go through the blanket level changes so that when you hit them as you read, you won't sweat it, if you get what I mean. Kind of giving you macro level change so that you understand what to look out for. All right, so let's talk first about processes. So process, or perhaps there's a higher level of consciousness. It's like this. Process is here. Then we have knowledge areas. Then we have process groups. I look at them as higher level because they're fewer, so I look at them in that way. And then under processes, we have inputs, tools and techniques, and outputs. So there are changes all over the PMBOK guide, but I'm going to tick those that there are changes and those where there are not changes, or kind of highlight them in some way. All right, so where there are changes I will tick, where there are not changes I'll leave alone. So I'm going to tick in red where there are name changes. So there are name changes at the process level. There are no name changes at the knowledge area level or the process group level, which is cool. There are changes, lots of changes in the input level and the output level, and a ton when it comes to the tools and techniques. Huge change. So let me show you what some of the huge changes are in the big ticket item, the tools and techniques. In the tools and techniques, major change here is they are now grouped and ungrouped tools and techniques. They are now grouped and ungrouped tools and techniques in the PMBOK guide. This is massive. So if you go to page 686 of the guide, you'll find a particular appendix. Appendix X6, I believe it is. So appendix X6 on page 680. Oh, it's actually 685, I beg your pardon, but the juice is on 686. So if we take a look at 685, it says Tools and Techniques, Introduction. The PMBOK Guide 6th edition presents tools and techniques differently from previous editions. Where appropriate, this edition groups tools and techniques by their purpose. The name describes the intent of what needs to be done and the tools and techniques. Isn't that interesting? Kind of different. And then it states, the group name describes the intent of what needs to be done, and the tools and techniques in the group represent different methods to accomplish the intent. For example, data gathering is a group with the intent of gathering data and information. Brainstorming, interviews, and market research are among the techniques that can be used to gather data and information. You see, so they are grouped by what they do. It then goes further to say this approach reflects the emphasis in the 6th edition on the importance of tailoring the information presented in the PMBOK guide to the needs of the environment, situation, organization, or project. It then goes further to say there are 132 individual tools and techniques in the PMBOK guide 6th edition. These are not the only tools and techniques that can be used to manage a project. They represent those tools and techniques that are considered to be good practice on most projects most of the time. Some are mentioned once and some appear many times in the PMBOK guide. To assist practitioners in identifying where specific tools and techniques are used, this appendix identifies each tool and technique, the group to which it belongs if appropriate, and the processes where it is listed in the PMBOK guide. Boom! That is gold. If this existed in previous editions, a lot of people wouldn't have had as much trouble as they did studying. So I want to encourage you to take a look at table X6-1, and it continues on page 686, 687, 688, on and on. And it covers these groups, all right? So what are the broad groups of these tools and techniques? I'm going to cover them really quickly just to give you a very firm understanding of these groupings, because if you ain't picked up the 6th, this is going to be like gibberish to you. So let me help you out, get some understanding about this topic, all right? So it's a big ticket item. I'm just going to move this to the left here, and I'm going to show you what exactly has become a core part of the PMBOK guide. All right, so we've got data. Lots of them start with the word data this, data that, because you know, project manager collects data, then needs to put the data in some display, then analyze it, so on and so forth. So we've got 1, data gathering techniques. That's the first one. Then we've got, after you gather your data, what do? Data analysis. So you got your data, analyze it, and then you want to put it into some sort of display. So you got a data representation, tools and techniques talked about. See? And each of these has some significant number of tools and techniques under each one. You see? After you represent the data, what could you do next? You could make a decision based on that data. So we've got decision making techniques. And it just so happens they're alphabetical. Next we have communication skills, which of course is now not alphabetical. But these communication skills are skills used between stakeholders, of course. And lastly, we've got interpersonal and team skills. And these will really, really help you understand where the PMBOK guide is going from chapters 4 to 13, because chapters 4 to 13, what are they made of when you boil it down? ITTOs. And a big portion of difficulty is the tools and techniques. Alright, so if you take a look, for example, under data gathering, you've got things that are used to gather data. You benchmark, you get that data, you brainstorm, You get various folks together in a room, rapidly generate these ideas, generate data, check sheets, and check sheets are used to store data. Checklists are used to spur your thinking into the data to collect. Focus groups, groups of people that you get together to collect data, of course. Interviews, you're collecting data. Market research, you're collecting data. Questions and surveys, collecting data. Statistical sampling, choosing part of a population of interest for inspection, also a form of gathering data when you do statistical sampling. And after data gathering, it goes into data analysis, and you can follow the rest. This was not in the 5th edition. That's why I'm taking time to show you that each one of these, each one has its own pool specific to it. Data analysis has its own unique tools and techniques. Data representation has its own. Decision making, communication skills, interpersonal and team skills. And for the 6th edition, I dare say that knowing these, especially these ones, data gathering, data analysis, data representation, being able to delineate one from the other and being able to hone in on what makes them different, that is a key part for the 6th edition. Definitely wasn't on the 5th in this way. You know, we would have a blanket statement, but they would not dig into the detail. Data analysis could be used as terminology, but it was not broken out like this. So if you are studying for the 6th edition exam, you want to really keep your eye on these, and you really want to get into the nitty-gritty of it. All right, so you got to go through all those tables, 686, 687, all the way down. And when we get to page 691, just put a note here, page 691, this is where it becomes ungrouped tools and techniques. So you got your ungrouped tools and techniques on page 691, 692, 693, 694. Remember, there are quite a number of them. So you have to know your individual tools and techniques. You have to know your group tools and techniques, and it helps knowing that is grouped under this or that is not grouped. That level of awareness will help you as you study. Okay? So, if we can go back to what we're looking at just now, I was showing you at a high level what has changed, and I hope this gives you a very clear idea of the importance of the tools and techniques and how they're presented on the 6th. But going back, a few other things that have changed in some way are the inputs and the outputs. The inputs and outputs have changed slightly in the names they are called, and there have been a few others introduced. There has been the inclusion of a couple of, for example, you got benefits management plan and business case. But the benefits management plan and the business case are now under business documents. So you see business documents as a new term, but some of the stuff in it you know. Maybe not all, but some you know. And as far as other inputs, tools, techniques, and outputs are concerned, there's actually a video where I do nothing but tools, techniques, inputs, outputs within the PMP exam power review. So if you haven't taken the PMP exam power review, that may also be another good weapon to add to your stockpile as you're getting ready for the test. So go to Praizion.com and check out our video there for the PMP exam power review. Very, very good. And right now, we're getting ready to have a boot camp. In fact, if you go to pmsucceed.com and look for the 6-hour boot camp in the menu options, click on it and it'll show you when our next boot camp is, our next 6-hour boot camp. We've got a 6-hour boot camp coming up on the 29th of September, and we're going to be having them rolling wave. We've already had a few prior where some of our bosses are now PMP certified, people who I've been through that program, so it works. So anyway, all of that to say the power review is a brutal comb through of everything that you need to study for the exam. We cover all the processes and we do it by process group. But within the package that we have for the power review, if you were to buy it to watch video on demand, you'll see that we covered all of the inputs, all of the tools and techniques, all of the outputs. So that is like a 17-hour training course online. But if you go to get the power review live, you'll find out that that comes with some live training as well. So on Saturday the 29th of September, we have 6 hours of training, but the folks attending that have over 17 hours of video footage to watch and learn from even before they get into the course or after. So more bang for their buck. Okay, so I said all of that to let you know that all the inputs, all the outputs, all the tools, all the techniques were covered in that curriculum online. And as far as the higher level changes I wanted to talk about, that is pretty much it, but I will go into a few processes that jump out at me and how those have changed. So let's move this. So which processes? So there's some new processes in the PMBOK guide. So let's take them one by one. In chapter 4, there's a new process called Manage Project Knowledge. And Manage Project Knowledge is a special process because this is where the Lessons Learned Register is generated. It's changed. This is now a very new concept. Before, we would have our organizational process assets done in the monitoring and controlling processes, but in the 6th edition they call out the fact that there is a separate process for lessons learned, and it's called Managed Project Knowledge, and we get the Lessons Learned Register from it. And this is really, really big. If anything huge has changed in the PMBOK guide, is this concept and understanding tacit knowledge and explicit knowledge, which were not even talked about in the 5th edition. Very big one. Keep your eye on that process. This is now process 4.4 and of course chapter 4. So that is the only process name that has changed. Now I'm doing this chapter by chapter, as I said. So that is the new process. New process. Okay. Now, in addition to this new process, it is helpful to know a few top-of-the-wave changes that have happened in other things that you knew before. So, at a very high level, Develop Project Charter is now a process that gives you an output known as the assumption log. This is a new concept, was not there previously, and the assumption log contains assumptions and constraints. So let me share this with you. I've been scribbling and not sharing, but now you can see what I'm looking at. So Manage Project Knowledge is a new process, and Develop Project Charter gives you the assumption log. In addition to this, something else I should show you here is an input to Develop Project Charter is now business documents. That was not in the 5th edition. Okay? So what have we covered? Manage Project Knowledge is a new process. Develop Project Charter now gives you as an output, this is an output, gives you the assumption log, and business documents is an input. And business documents are your benefits management plan and your business case. New concept, just something to be aware of. All right. What else? Still in chapter 4, and I'll just move it to this side. Still in chapter 4, we have 4.2, develop project management plan, giving you the project management plan. So the project management plan, I just call it PM plan. The project management plan goes to almost every process. This is something to take note of. Goes to all but 2 processes. That was not the case in the 5th edition. In the 6th edition, the project management plan goes everywhere except back into itself and into develop project charter. But everywhere else, even identify stakeholders, the project management plan goes there. That is a huge difference. We had never seen the project management plan going from planning back into identify stakeholders, for example. That was totally forbidden in the 5th edition. In the 6th edition, it is. So the project management plan goes everywhere, every process, everyone from the time it was created to even previously in identify stakeholders when we didn't have it at first, but as a feedback loop it goes in and then goes everywhere else. So this is a very, very big concept, that is new. That's 4.2, develop project management plan. 4.3, let's talk about 4.3 and what has changed in 4.3. 4.3, direct and manage project work. One of the big changes here is the outputs that you get from direct and manage project work is now the issue log. This was not the case. If you remember, the issue log came from a different process, but now the issue log comes from direct and manage project work. Definitely something you want to think about. Of course, we've got our WPD still from there, and we also have our deliverables from there as before. But the issue log is a new concept coming from direct and manage project work. All right. We've already talked about 4.4, so let us advance to talk about 4.5, which is monitor and control project work. Again, nothing much has changed. There's a little bit of dialogue before this process that talks about what change requests are made of. So change requests, which is really more under 4.3, but of course it has association with so many processes. But corrective action, preventive action could be part of your change request, defect repair could be, and updates could also be part of these change requests. So I'm not sure if it was broken out to include these updates before, but anyway, I'm just showing it to you just in case. So all of that was a precursor to monitor and control project work, where you still get out work performance reports. So that is still the case. Nothing has changed in that regard. Also, perform integrated change control. Before it would explicitly call out a change log as an output, or some things as an output of processes. Talking about PICC 4.6, now instead of calling out the change log explicitly, it calls out project documents, and under project documents we have the change log. We also have approved change requests as before. And of course, we've got all change requests leading in here. We also have, beg your pardon, now you can't see me because, or see it because of me. So let me do that again. You've got going into PICC change requests. So that's going in, and approved change request is coming out. And going in, you also have, going into PICC, you also have work performance reports. So that hasn't changed. That has pretty much stayed the same. All right. So moving ahead to 4.7, because now there are 7 processes in integration as opposed to just 6. There are some new things, taking a look at close project or phase. So close project or phase definitely has some new stuff in it. And one of the things that jumps out at me is one of the outputs of closed project or phase. It's called a final report. It's a final breakdown of the outcome of the project, what was achieved at a high level, did we meet the goal, so on and so forth. And it's called a final report. We still have the final product, service, or result transition. We have lessons learned register rolled up under project documents updates. So bear that in mind. We have project documents updates, and we have the lessons learned register being touted as an output of that due to, of course, updates. But we also have final product, service, or result transition, as we did before, FPSRT. So that is closed project or phase for the most part. There are some interesting analyses used here as tools and techniques. So I just say watch out for the tools and techniques. You've got regression analysis, trend analysis, variance analysis, document analysis. These are all used, of course, to generate that final report and a general understanding of where everyone is on the project. See? And that, to be honest, is pretty much it. While we're here talking about closed project or phase, I know it's coming much later on, but there used to be 2 processes in closing. But now there is only 1. So if we're going to examine one more time this first image that I showed you guys at the very start, let's go back here. So if we're really going to examine this under the microscope, we could take these process groups and we could say, okay, initiating, planning, executing, monitoring and controlling, and closing. Okay, these are your process groups. But what have the changes been? So let me put this in blue. The changes are 0 for initiating, that stayed the same. There were 2 in initiating and there's still 2. Planning, there were, I believe it was 24. I don't think that number has changed. So I'm going to say there's 0 changes because this is still 2. This is 24 still. So there's been some shuffling here and there. A few things have moved up and down. And I'll cover those as we progress. 224. So before, this was 8, but they're now 10. So it's 224, 10, 12, 1. So this is a +2 as well, I think. Or this is a +1, I think. A +1, because it was 224, 8, 11, 2. And this has been a -1. So I'm trying to make sense out of everything and calculate. So there were 47 before. Now they're 49. Yep, makes sense. So 1 cancels -1, and they're now 2. So there's been an increase of 2 in executing, an increase of 1 in monitoring and controlling, a decrease of 1 in closing, and planning has stayed the same because stuff has moved around. That's all that happened for the most part. and initiating has stayed the same. So if you wanted to look at this by process group, you could argue that, well, the number of processes in each process group has changed. And in the same token, the number of processes across the knowledge areas has also changed. So if we take a look at that, I saw 6 Cubans quietly rolling cigars, really puffing smoke. So I'm looking at this, and I'll just show you the changes. In integration, there has been a +1. In scope, it's 0. Schedule, there has been a -1. Cost is 0. Quality is 0. Although the name of, what was it called before? The second process of quality, I don't even want to remember what it's called. I'm glad I don't remember, I shouldn't. But it was called something before. Okay, it was called Perform QA before, but now it's called Manage Quality, so I'm glad I don't remember it very well. But it's 0 as far as the numbers. Resource management, it used to be called Human Resource Management, but it's now called Resource Management. So I guess you could say there has been a name change. Some people say that is major, because now this is all about any type of resource: human, equipment, material, supplies, facilities, all of them. So looking at resources, if you're going to look at the 4 that were there before, this has had an increase of 2, and one of them was actually moved from schedule. Estimate activity resources was moved from schedule to resources. Communications is 0. Risk now has a new process called Implement Risk Responses. That is new. Procurements, there's a -1 from closed procurements. Stakeholder, there's 0. So again, if you do the maths, the ones cancel out, these ones cancel out, and it's just a +2. So that's how it went from 47 to 49. And that's the secret. That's pretty much it. So, those are the changes. If you really wanted to examine them at that level, those are the changes. So we've talked about the high-level changes, those in the ITTOs, those in the process groups, those in the knowledge areas, whatever level you want to look at them as. There have been a few name changes. So where we had changes were things that were called control before. A few of them are now called monitor, and I'll give you those examples in more detail. But before we had control risk, it's now monitor risk. Before we had control communications, now it's monitor communications. Before we had control stakeholder engagement, now we have monitor stakeholder engagement. And other things like that. Before we had perform QA, now we have manage quality, and it's kind of broader than what it was before. All right, so that is pretty much it for chapter 4, and that concludes our session for today, because each of these chapters, they have a little bit of depth to them, and I don't want to go into fire hose mode and have your eyes glazing over and you can't remember. So if you can watch these, we've tackled 4 chapters today. If you can go back and watch it again and again to familiarize yourself as far as what has changed, the next session we could do another 3. We could do scope, schedule, and something else, so that I just keep showing you the changes incrementally, and as you're studying, you're going to be like, oh, that has changed, and it's going to stick and it's going to make sense, as opposed to just shoving the whole kitchen sink in front of you. I'd rather do it in an incremental fashion. Okay? So, I believe that's it for today, folks. If you have any questions, or there's anything you want further explanation about, do not hesitate to send in a comment, or if you're fortunate to get this when the chat is open, that way, that way, to the chat. Okay? I hope you found this to be useful. It is the first in a series of sessions about the changes to the PMBOK guide 5th into the 6th. Okay? I look forward to your questions, and I look forward to helping you ramp up so that you can ace this exam. Remember, go to Praizion, look for these products, the audio digest, and if you were to sign up, you're also going to get the book if you sign up for the actual course. Okay, so I encourage you to do that. All right, well, thank you very much, and look forward to speaking to you again in our next session. Those of you who are trying to make the jump. Those of you who were not living in the 5th, maybe you're watching this. Well, I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you, and bye for now.